Hello. Imagine you're in a situation where you're looking for a job change. You've got two offers. One is from Facebook and another is from Geo. One is from a tech giant and another is from a company where the tech giant is investing on. Are you confused? Maybe. Should you go with the status quo or should you take part in building for the next billion customers, also known as Bharat? A warm welcome to all of you to ProductTank Delhi's event, Building for Bharat Customers, a series of talk by product champions at Hike. You ditching Netflix on a Saturday afternoon for product talks is really passionate about product, and we appreciate that. I'm your host, Dhruv Agarwal. I am an engineering manager at Seattle, and my love for product has brought me here to host this lovely event for you. My friend Siddharth is co hosting this event with me, and he's a product consultant working with various startups on their user journeys and monetization strategies. 8 years ago, product did not have a lot of communities. So we started Product Tank and then the conference Mind the Product. Well, now, today, 8 years later, we are spread across 200 cities with over 150,000 chapters, 25,000 plus subscribers to our newsletter, and an active Slack community with over 15,000 members. Product Tank Delhi is one of the chapters. It's a platform for product managers in Delhi and around to talk about product design, implementation, design and development, user experience, and all the other things that gets us excited. We bring to you talks from industry leaders on product management, networking opportunities, and a chin wag over a beer or two. Actually, I'll keep the last one till the pandemic ends. To get updates from our next events, you can follow this QR code or I'll put a link in the description. Today, we are having a series of talks by the product managers at Hike. Hike is an Indian led unicorn startup that is committed to building a new social future. Hike believes that the future of social will have products that are joyful and built around people and not the other way around. The company the company believes future lies in social niches and scaling that the future through the products it's building. Keeping the Indian customers in mind, they have recently launched Highland, which is world's first mobile-first virtual experience platform where you can experience magical experiences along with your friends and share your experiences with hike emojis, which is the user's virtual identity. Before I move further, I know you are all greeting from the comment section and keep doing that. Before we move further into the event, I'd like to know from you what all Bharat companies do you know about? Mention those in the comments. If you work for one, great. Mention that in the comment as well. For those who do not know what Bharat stands for, I'll give you a hint. Bharat is everything which the metropolitan and tier 1 cities don't have in the country, right? And most of our country is in Bharat and not India. That's just a slang that we use for Bharat companies. So I've given some hints in my previous slides, in my dialogue, whatever I've been doing. So I'd love to know from all of you some companies that you know about that are making for Bharat. All right. I'll give one example. Meesho. I'll give another one. Geo. I'd love to know from all of you what all you think about it. All right. Keep those comments pouring in and I'll explain the schedule in the meantime. Today we have a packed event for you. Three talks, 20 minutes each talk, 10 minutes of Q&A followed by that. Simple. Keep putting your love for the speakers, applause, feedback, questions in the comments, and we'll pick the relevant ones in the Q&A. No other rules. Grab a cup of coffee, slip into your PJs, or stay wherever you're comfortable. I'll promise, if you stick till the end, it'll be worth your while. Lovely comments coming in. Share chat, IOCL, ITC. Yeah, I think, guys, I underestimated you. And you know much more about the Bharat companies than I do. So I'll proceed to our first speaker before getting any further embarrassed. He's an entrepreneur, author, and a strategy consultant. He watches cartoons with his 3-year-old in his free time, and he's a senior principal PM at Hike. Please welcome Aditya on screen to talk about customer centricity and jobs to be done. Aditya, all yours.
Hi guys. Hi, great to see such a great turnout and all the enthusiastic comments starting already. Um, I am here today to talk about customer centricity and the jobs to be done framework, which can help that, right? Um, Customer centricity is, of course, one of our key values at Hike. So this is something that we live and breathe every day. Um, but the talk is not so much about customer centricity as much as why is it so difficult to crack this. So to begin, let me just I don't want to talk too much about myself. You might have noticed that my hike emoji looks quite a bit like me, and you'll be thinking, "Kya sahi ML engine hai inka?" Which we do have. We have a good ML engine, but a little bit of a secret is that I saw my hike emoji and I'm like, you know what? I should look like this, and that's an ongoing style makeover that I'm trying to do. Um, I lead I lead major parts of Hike Moji, which is this, as well as Hike Land, which I will just come to. Um, and the main thought that is driving us, is propelling us, is that if you look at social products and social experiences, they were some of the earliest winners of the mobile ecosystem, right? And they started right at the beginning. If you remember the iPhone, the first iPhone, like nowadays, if you see compare against modern phones, smartphones, it was like the size of a thumbnail inside a Samsung Note, right? It was tiny. There was no space on the screen. Data was a big problem. So the UX, it made sense for it to be centered around text, right? Um, and we were coming from a purely text oriented um, backdrop at that point of time, right? But that has changed totally, right? Screens are gigantic. We all use our mobile phone screens to watch high definition video, to play fully 3D games, right? Um, the phone is a gateway to multimedia experiences. Apart from that, apart from that, data has become very cheap, and data has really exploded. So then, why are our social experiences still kind of stuck in that UX and that world? And that is something that we are trying to kind of change with Highland. We are trying to build the world's first kind of mobile first virtual world, and focusing it around hanging out with close friends, right? So, how do you hang out with close friends in your kind of own virtual space? And over shared experiences. The main difference between hanging out versus communication is, even if you think about your real life, right? Hanging out is synchronous. You're at the same time with other people. You are spending a decent amount of time with them in one session, right? It's not like 50 seconds each, right? It's like 20 minutes. And you're doing something together, because once you are kind of hang out with somebody for 20 minutes, you don't have so much to talk about every day, right? So you're doing something together while you're talking, while you're chatting. So that's what we're trying to build. So now customer centricity, right, and jobs to be done. See, we are in the profession of innovation. Definitely at Hike, we're trying to do something which is pioneering, a world first, which has not been done. We can't just kind of go in and get inspired from existing products. So we really got to keep the customer at the center. But see, here's the thing, right? I mean, if you think about customer centricity, right? Why is it even something to talk about? Why is it even difficult, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? We should give the customer what they want, and the converse of it is even more obvious, that we shouldn't give the customer what they don't want. So that's hardly a Einstein level insight, right? I mean, like, why are you guys here listening to me? And what are the product tank guys thinking, doing this talk at all? But let me tell you something, and especially the ones, those of you who are still kind of studying, customer centricity, in my mind, remains the biggest and most core challenge organizations and people in this profession of innovation face. And not um, that's not randomly the case. There's a very real reason for that, right? What is that reason? What is the problem with this? Why does everyone keep talking about it? And I want to kind of dramatize this a bit, because that's the only way it makes sense, right? And this example is actually from a real example I've seen as part of my work at Bain. It was an airline company with similar non-digital company, right? So imagine this fancy meeting room, massive company, right? One of the best buildings in the city, the most important meeting room, gigantic oak table, etc., right? And so then there is important people of the company sitting around it, right? And we have given them cute little hike emojis. That's not what they look like. They're all like 50-year-olds. But you can imagine that there's some kind of the leader, the visionary, right? In our hike emoji, she's wearing a cool dress, but still balanced, shows her personality. Then there's this energetic go-getter, right? You can see that he has just gone and gotten a haircut based on how his hike emoji looks like to be more stylish like me. Um, and then there's this champion of customer centricity. And ये देख के लग रहा है that she's kind of boring. Hobbies नहीं है. Hobbies reading books about work. That kind of person. And that's usually how we are, us customer-centric people. Now, imagine this conversation, and it's a very real example actually. So the visionary, the leader says, you know what, everyone's going digital, right? And we are the biggest airline in the country. We need to go digital too. So we need an app, right? Because everyone has apps nowadays, right? You need an app. And we need an app for users to kind of, maybe what do? They book tickets. So we need an app for them to book tickets. And the go-getter is like, yeah, it's a great idea, man. What an idea. You know what? Even while you were talking, I just pinged like 4 software vendors. I'm going to close it within the week, don't worry. And like, everyone's like, wow, kya hero hai there. And then this customer-centric person like, but people have so many apps on their phones. Will they keep an app just for this one thing? Just to book tickets once in a while from our airline? And this is a real example. And you can imagine at that point of time, right? Is the customer-centric person getting a lot of love in the room, right? Are people like saying, hey, it's great? What a thought, right? And they're not. They're like, kya bol raha hai? They just want to, this person just want to say no to everything, right? Just give me a second. Yeah. So that is a core challenge of customer centricity, right? The core challenge is that if you really want to be customer centric, you got to accept a pretty terrifying truth, which is that mostly customers won't care about what you're trying to make. And that's a difficult thought to deal with. And it's a difficult thought for you. It's a difficult thought for everyone in your company, for all the executives in your company as well. And it doesn't make you very popular, right? So to be truly customer centric and go beyond kind of the adages and the easily shareable snippets of wisdom, to be truly customer centric means accepting that the user is a busy person, right? And that the user has a day filled already with things that they're already doing, and they have absolutely no interest in your plans, right? So they won't want to try out your feature. Actually, they won't actually suddenly wake up and think, you know what, I need to search for this specific app, right? They're not interested at all in your SMS, your email, your notif, even the words you put on your screen which they're using. They would rather do anything in the world rather than going through your onboarding. And they don't really want to spend any effort trying to include your product in their life. See, trying to do anything different has a mental effort, and people don't want to actually spend it, right? And all this also sounds true, but then hey, people do it all the time, right? People are actually using new products all the time, and innovation is only growing. So why is that? And that's where jobs to be done helps, right? It helps you center your model of the user and what they're going to use it for, right? And it helps you then understand what is the activation point and what is not, right? So jobs to be done says that you got to keep this in mind, that customers go through the effort and the pain of doing anything new, of using something, a new feature or a new product, only because it solves a job that they need done, right? um, what does that mean, right? Almost think of it like you have a job that you need someone to do and you're hiring them, right? Except that is not a person, it's a product, right? The easiest, cheapest, most accessible thing to hire is what you're going to hire, right? um, for a specific person, if your product does not solve the job they need to get solved, it doesn't matter if your product is beautiful, it doesn't matter if your product is delightful, it doesn't matter if it's bug free, right? People won't make the effort to switch or to use it. And let me give a very kind of specific example for this. Let's take the task list, right? Now, a lot of people, a lot of us would have used a task list, right? What is a job to be done for us, right? We want to kind of keep track of everything on our plate, um, because keeping track of that makes our lives somewhat easier, somewhat better, right? Now, any job to be done has many possible solutions, right? And the solutions are not always your obvious kind of competitors, right? For the job to be done of a task list, pen and paper is a competitor for you if you're making a task list app, right? The Notepad application on our PC, I think we've all jotted down stuff on it once in a while. That's a potential solution. Google Sheets is a potential solution. And some specific app is a potential solution. These are all competitors for this job to be done. And most users of the 7 billion people on the planet, right? Most people will use one, maybe two, right? They will not, your main competition is not even other apps. And that's the important part of jobs to be done, right? Now, I used to do this. Why do I do that? So this is what we have to focus on. People use something new, something innovative, when their need is more specific, so more mainstream existing solution doesn't work for them. Why did I use Todoist? Because I needed to take notes on the fly, right, from my mobile phone or on the computer, and I want to keep it in a central place so I won't lose it, right? Google Sheets does the same thing, and I did consider it, but it's a pain to use on my phone, right? So that's the only reason I use it. And in fact, I stopped using it as soon as I had another option, which was Notion, which I now use because anyway I'm using it as part of work. So the important thing also of a job to be done is I don't care about Todoist. I don't care about any other app that I use for this. I only care about my job to be done. So to summarize, what is it? It's something that the user wants to do to make their life better, right? And it can have many solutions. Many of them will not be your obvious competitors, right? But they are competitors nonetheless. The biggest competition any innovator faces are the existing mainstream, already used options. You can call it inertia, right? Inertia is actually the biggest competition any innovator faces. And usually, which is why people say don't try making for everybody, right? Because everybody is using kind of whatever is already available. You have to target the kind of person who needs a more specific solution, so that what is easily accessible to them, which is pen and paper and the Notepad application, doesn't do the job for them. So they have to actually make the effort. They then actually need to make the effort and go through the pain of trying to find a real solution, which you can then solve for them. All right. Very quickly, what is not a job to be done, right? And then we'll finish the talk. See, features are not jobs to be done, right? A job to be done is something that the user does to make their life better. It is never something that the user does to make your life better or your company's life better, right? Now the company and your product will still have lots of features, which is to make your life better, right? For example, the e-commerce app wants customers to invite friends. That's for the e-commerce app. about the e-commerce company's life to get better. That's not a job to be done for the user. A social app wants a customer to purchase items. That's again more for the social app than for the customer. Obviously, anyone who wants to read SMS emails is usually for themselves. Now, however, if you want your features to succeed, the chances are much higher if they actually connect to the customer psychological job to be done, right? Um, okay, so the answer in the speaker notes, so I'll just explain. See, a customer, for example, in an e-commerce app, one of the things they want to do is they want to find the best deal, the biggest discount, right? You want them to invite friends. So can you then tie your inviting friends to a discount you can give, right? That works very well. Pinduoduo succeeded widely with this. Uh, we did something similar when I was at LimeRoad. Um, Similarly, say social apps, right? Now, when I am in a social app, right, you know, I don't go there to buy stuff, but I do want to look trendy and cool, right? That is a job to be done. That's not a job to be done. My social app is currently maybe doing for me, but it is a job to be done for me, right? So I want to know that I'm buying trendy, cool stuff. That is a psychological job to be done for me. So if I have a social app, right, can I get my trendy, cool people to sell the stuff to you, saying that, hey, you know what, I'm trendy and cool. That's why you're following me. So this is my stuff, right? And that's kind of what they're doing, right? Influencer-based buying. Because I don't go to Insta to buy stuff, but I do. This is a job to be done, so then you can get success to it. More kind of examples of this, but we are kind of out of time. There are times when your company will want to do something where there isn't a good job to be done, and mostly they fail. For example, FMCG companies very often want to have apps, and they have apps. You just don't know about them because nobody ever uses them, right? Because they are not targeting a real job to be done. That's kind of the end of the talk. The only last thought I want to leave you guys with is that it's even tougher than this because the job to be done is not the end, it's the beginning. And to kind of elucidate that with example, like I really want a flying car. I want a flying car. I want a flying car that's absolutely safe, right? I mean, I have kids. I want to win 10 lakhs because, hey, I'm not made of money, guys. Cheap mein chahiye mujhe. And I'm telling you guys, hey, solve my job to be done. Please start a company and do this. And this reason is not done yet because job to be done is only the beginning. Everyone knows that people want flying cars, right? But in the end, innovation is the art of the possible. You got to get a job to be done, right? You got to find a job to be done. That job to be done is something that other people are not doing super well, so that you actually have a chance of success with it. And it's something that you can actually then do, right, with your resources, with your skills, with what you have at your disposal. And otherwise, it's all theoretical, right? And that is kind of what the profession of product management and of innovation is. It's the art of the possible to solve kind of unmet needs. And that's all from me. Thank you. Oh, by the way, guys, most of this is not my thoughts. These are from an amazing book called When Coffee and Kale Compete by Alan Clement. Many of you might have heard of it. Thoroughly recommended. One of my best reads on the subject. All right. Thank you, guys. Questions?
So Aditya, thank you so much for that brilliant session right now. I think there's a lot we've learned. I think there are some questions pouring in, and Dhruv is just going to be putting up a few on screen. So while he selects a few, I'm just going to start off with one question that kind of helps set the tempo a bit. So because you mentioned a lot around jobs to be done, and also Hike works a lot in the visual spectrum, right? And there was an interesting part you said at the start that how we're still stuck in the era of text because that's what we had as in terms of memory and bandwidth available at the start of the mobile era, and we're still stuck there. So Hike is moving a lot in the space of emojis and all. So do you see visuals, emojis, videos, and all becoming the future way of communication. Like, not to make this light, but are we seeing something that we'll be going somewhat back to like Egyptian hieroglyphics, where it's more image-led conversation rather than text-led conversation? And if so, how is Hike seeing that future to be?
See, that's exactly what I want to kind of talk about in jobs to be done. That's not how consumers think. The consumer is not saying that मुझे image में बात करना है या मुझे text में बात करना है, right? Consumer has a deeper psychological need that they're trying to solve, right? The need that we are targeting is hanging out, right? What does hanging out mean, right? Hangout means that you're spending a lot of time with somebody in one session and you want to feel together and you want to have fun. And the way you feel together and have fun, even offline, is usually over some kind of shared experiences, right? Which is very different from chat. Chat is primarily, I mean, it's super optimized for communication, right? Communication and hanging out are not the same thing. My job to be done from both as a consumer is slightly different, right? So we are optimizing for hanging out. That's what we're working on Highland. So it's not, so that's the thing. Image versus text is feature. Consumers not hiring you for in images. Consumers are hiring you for a job to be done. Like, I want the best possible way to hang out, to have fun over digital medium when I'm with somebody for half an hour, 1 hour, right? I know I don't have so much to talk about. It doesn't happen. I'm talking about in images or text, right? The baat karne ka hi nahi hai mujhe. So that's when you need shared experience. That's why even offline you have shared experience. You hang out over a movie. You hang out by going out together or something. Right? Why? Because अगर हर रोज एक घंटे का बात करना होता है, you'll run out of things to say, and it's also not fun.
Aditya, completely understand. I think that's why I'm just going to jump onto the audience question we have here, which is actually online. You're saying here. So Ashima is asking: can jobs to be done be in two ways? Either can it be something that solves a customer problem, or is it to create a psychological need for a customer because a company wants to push their features? Is that something how you define jobs to be done?
Very good point. So, see, the thing is, jobs to be done, because it's become a popular framework. The lingo is used in different contexts in different organizations, right? The context I'm using is a context in that book, which is one of the foundational books of this modern philosophy. In that philosophy, job to be done is the deeper psychological need, right? That is the core thing, hopefully, that your product is solving, which is why they're using your product. Right. That being said, you will have other business goals also, right? Your business goals are not their jobs to be done. They don't want to do them, right? So it's a give and take. Usually, to kind of get some of your side business goals in, you need to give them something, so they will give you something, right? But at the core of it, they will only be using you in the first place if you're solving a deeper job to be done, right? Which is the example that I gave. Like, we are an e-commerce company. Why are they coming there, right? They're coming there to find the best deals. That's why they're coming there. Now, we want them to invite their friends. That's not why they're coming there. But if we give them something, they can give it back, right? And that's kind of how this whole thing works. So for me, like that, inviting friends is not a job at all for the e-commerce side. It's something we want, and so we kind of tie it to the actual job we've done, which is getting the best deals. I can't hear you.
Oops, I was on mute. So I'm just saying your primary goal remains making the customer happy for the main thing they're coming for.
Right.
Everything, all business goals are secondary, and it'll only happen if the customer is happy with the primary goal they're coming there for.
Exactly.
So, okay, now when we look at something like this, now in the Indian market or the Indian consumers, right? Now, the Indian market and Indian consumers in itself are a vast, audience in itself, and it's something that I've heard a lot of people say that India is a continent, not a country. So when you're creating a product or a job for the Indian market and consumers? What's your thought process behind it? How do you, is there segmentation that happens for the same job itself? How do you approach that for such a wide audience?
So it's a very good question. It's a very good question because it's about a core principle. It doesn't matter whether you're building for India or anywhere else. Don't try to build for everybody, right? It just never works because people don't have the same job to be done. Build for one specific job to be done, which a specific type of person will have, and do that well, and then grow from there. That's kind of the innovation template that is a lot of people talk about, and that's what we also believe, right? Building for everybody when you're a smaller company or even a mid-sized company, just very difficult to do. Or even one small team in a big company. India is especially diverse, but that problem will happen anywhere, right? Let's say New York, we just take, forget, New York is still quite diverse. Let's say Montana, right? But even Montana will have computer engineers and 60-year-old grannies, right? And they don't have the same job to be done. So it's not just about the geography. It's kind of really about one specific type of user and one job to be done. So we are solving for young people looking to hang out who are not physically proximate with their close friends in the evenings, for example, right? And obviously in the Indian setup, but it's very specific.
Makes sense. And now when we're looking at this, I'm just going to, because we have a time sensitivity and we have a couple of more talks coming in, so we're just going to take on two more final questions. So we have this one question from Rizwan Alam, and I'm going to just expand on this a bit. Is when there's, he's asking what is the scope of integration in the market, right? And I would just like to add to this question is that, because at the end of the day, you're trying to create a social experience, right? Or where people are doing things together. But we also see a huge trend happening towards super apps, where people want to do a lot of things through the same place. Is that something that you feel is at odds with social, or is it something, when you look at all this integration of payment and everything else through a single app, is that something at odds with social, or do you see that as something that will still remain separate?
Understand. So actually, we are seeing a movement away from super apps, not towards super apps. Super apps primarily grew in Asian markets because in Asian markets, the software industry was a little bit ahead when kind of smartphones hit, right? In the West, mobile software was at its infancy when smartphones were at their infancy, right? In the East, kind of, they hit a little bit later. So software had a chance to already be good, right? By simply copying a lot of the stuff that's already there. But mobile ecosystem was at its infancy. So then some apps could dominate by having a lot of stuff in one go, right? And people got used to it. So the job to be done for the super app is, obviously it doesn't have one single job to be done. So it goes against the theory. But it totally goes for what I was saying is that people will just go for the easiest solution, right? If I'm used to something, if I'm used to WeChat and WeChat also has payment, I won't go and look for another app unless I have a very specific need, which that WeChat or payment is not solving. So that kind of took off in some specific Eastern countries. Over time, and those are also closed markets, like China is a very closed market. All apps can't compete. Across the world, generally, super apps have not worked, right? And if you notice, all these big companies keep trying to put in more stuff in their apps, but the specific apps for those things still continue to thrive, right? So I think, when we talk about software integration, it is super important and more important to think of partnerships because you want to specialize. You want to specialize for a job to be done, right? If we are making a Hangout app, you should make a Hangout app. If that needs a payment as a feature, right? There's no point for us to make that feature because that's not our job to be done. We should just kind of partner with somebody, integrate their software, etc. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'll just leave this as a final question here then. And apologies in advance to all the other people who send in questions. There are a lot of great questions, and we try to see if the speakers can answer them towards the end of the overall session. but just for time, this is the last question we're taking from Aditya. So, like you said, like there's a trend away from super apps and all. So, what do you see? This is a good question. Is how do you see communication apps developing, especially in the Indian context?
Yeah, yeah, good question. See, I think the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to have is that these are not questions where my answer is any better than your answer. And go and talk to your customer to really figure this out. Don't go by what someone is saying on YouTube. None of us know, right? I mean, the bet we are taking, some of the kind of directional thoughts that we have is definitely that um, it will be more audiovisual, right? And then and it'll not be one single thing, right? There will be kind of differences. There'll be kind of audiovisual for office work. There'll be a fun hangout place. There'll be kind of, I don't know, stuff like that. There'll be like 2 3 different communication platforms. Then there'll be just your very normal chat, which will continue to exist, right? Continue to be the kind of mainstay that everyone is on. So I think it'll kind of the directional thoughts that we have is that it'll split into more specialized jobs to be done as the market evolves.
I think, Aditya, that's great input. And of course, I disagree with you that all of us are on the same page here, is because we believe your opinion and views on this would be a bit more, based on a bit more knowledge than us in this case.
But not compared to your customer. I'm still,
Fair
the
enough.
person who will know the best is the person you're solving for.
Yeah, the customer knows best, right? The customer is always right. So I think so. Aditya, thank you so much for your time, and I think this has been a really valuable session for all of us. So we have 2 more sessions lined up. My colleague Dhruv will just be coming on to introduce the next set of speakers now. Thank you, Aditya.
Thanks so much.
Well, great talk, Aditya. I mean, really insightful. Um, and so according to Netflix, when they consider about jobs to be done, their biggest competitor is sleep. So if a customer wants to spend time, they don't want the customer to sleep so that they can use Netflix. Uh, and one more, phrase that I've always cherished is that. So I've heard this abbreviation called NIHITO. Nothing important happens in the office. So you just go out to the market and listen to the customers. So great talk. All right, everyone, give yourself a little stretch, maybe hydrate yourself, take a short break, because we are coming up with 2 speakers. So what one speaker could do to you, imagine what 2 will do. Next up, coming up, Arpit and Smriti. Their talk inspires the title of this event. Arpit and Smriti both are associate PMs at Hike. Arpit loves cooking and watches basketball in his free time, and Smriti is addicted to her coffee and loves baking. So please welcome on screen Arpit and Smriti. Smriti, over to you.
Hello. I'll. All right. Hi, everyone. Hope the COVID times are treating everybody well. I'll just put up. Yeah. So today we'll be speaking about building for Bharat, Indian products solving local problems. The agenda of this talks is covered within 3 folds. We'll first be discussing what is Bharat and why do we need to build for it. Next we will cover how are Indian startups trying to solve Indian problems. And third and last, we'll be discussing what are we solving at Hike. But first, let's introduce ourselves. Arpit?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, ProductTank team. Thanks, Drew, for such a warm welcome. It was really insightful hearing to Aditya. Daily we hear him in office, but here he was specifically talking about customer centricity and jobs to be done. So it was amazing. As stated by Smriti, our agenda is pretty clear. We want to talk about what is Bharat eventually mean by us, what we think so, in Bharat comprises of, like what kind of user personas we have, what kind of customs they have, how we need to break those shackles and everything. Then we'll be focusing on that which Indian startups are working to solve Indian problems, the local problems we have. And then we'll definitely talking about Highland, the social, virtual, mobile first experience we are building in Hike for our local community. So this is it. I will introduce myself before going deep down into this. So I'm Arpit. I'm in product team of Hike, and at this point, I'm working on Hikeland, the new virtual social experience we are bringing on, and it's been absolute delight. In spite of this COVID times, we have launched our early preview with two major experiences. So do check it out. And apart from that, I will also give my brief introduction about my professional journey. So before Hike, I was with Hindustan Times Group, HT Media Group, and I developed their subscription product for alignment.com. And I also have 2+ years of experience in vernacular product with Live Hindustan and their entertainment product with Desi Marty. And as Dhruv said, I love cooking and watching basketball. So this brief about me, I will give it to Smriti, who will take you deep down into what Bharat is, and then we'll run through some examples. Over to you, Smriti.
All right. Thanks, Arpit. Hi, everyone. I'm Smriti Pant. I am an associate product manager at Hike. I have worked extensively with Hikeland, which is our virtual hangout product. And I've actually been a part of the team ever since its conception. Apart from that, I've also been very deeply involved with Hikemoji, which is our virtual avatar and identity product. And well, it's really exciting times at Hike right now. But before that, let me take you through what is Bharat. Now, let's try to visualize what do we mean by when we say Bharat, especially the people that use popular apps like, let's say, Swiggy, Uber, Cred, or even CureFit. I think what most of us would imagine would be like the image which is towards the right of my screen. You know, tier 1 people, possibly liberal households without any restrictions, fancy education institutions, freedom of interaction with opposite sex, exposure to all the latest trends, if in the upper age bracket, maybe stable, well paying jobs in the private sector, and hence they have some propensity to spend online. Now, this thought stems from some of our own biases. So, we relate with these people since we see most of them around us. We see them in our YouTube, we see them as influencers, we see them in all the short videos that all of us are currently watching during the lockdown, and we see them in movies. I mean, for example, Student of the Year looks pretty much like this Mumbai thing, doesn't it? Now, look towards the right of my screen again. Clearly look at the images, and you'll spot the differences as compared to the previous slide. Specifically notice the body language, the dressing style, even the proximity with the opposite sex. This is Bharat. Majority of the people in India lie in this bucket, which is basically tier 2, tier 3 cities. The majority of them have conservative households. There are lack of opportunities to hang out with their friends offline, lack of restaurants, cafe, even these hangout places that we possibly have in NCR, Gurgaon, all these places. There is a lack of access to global trends. They are financially conservative, not because they don't have the funds, but because they maybe prefer spending it in things that are more required. And there is reduced access to quality education. Building for this particular tier would be starkly different as compared to building for the previous one. But why should we even solve for Bharat? Why is it so required? To answer that question, let's go back to when most of the popular apps were actually developed. Right, the scenario of India was very different. Data was expensive. Like I remember when I used to talk to my friends and my cousins, and there used to be this thing called switching off your data if you're not actually using it. That itself gives a whole idea about how expensive data was. Apart from that, most of the devices that were available at affordable prices had little to no graphic support and had very less space for the apps. And the propensity to spend online was also pretty less because I was just being developed. Now, we have cheaper 4G enabled phones available at great affordable prices, and they have great space as well. We have cheaper data thanks to Geo. Coming to tier 2, tier 3 markets, they are pretty much underserved and pretty untapped, and the market potential is huge. If you look at the image towards my right, you can see how the chunk of the pyramid grows as you go down. The topmost tier, which is the elite, the affluent, and the aspirers, that area is pretty much rife with competition for applications, right? I mean, every app is building for them. Every app is building for the people who can spend without thinking. What about this set of people? Not many are focusing there. And that's why the market potential is huge. In fact, they are also building early stage propensity to transact online, thanks to the demonetization and the whole digital India movement. Also, a lot of modern day solutions don't really resonate with their needs. Hence, there is a clear need gap that we can leverage over here. Now, when we think about solving for Bharat, there are some very key points that we should be thinking of. Number one, recognize the differences in behavior of users. As Aditya clearly mentioned in his previous presentation, somebody is not really going to use your product unless it solves a particular problem for you. Now, the unsolved problems of tier 1 will be starkly different as compared to the unsolved problems of tier 2 and tier 3. Hence, talking to our customers and knowing the differences in their problems and actually solving for them would be the way to go when building for Bharat. Apart from that, their delights might be pretty different as well. Like for say, somebody in tier 1 might be happy with a free dessert or with a great combo package, but somebody in a tier 2 or tier 3 might actually be happier with the cashback. So knowing these differences is very important. Number 2, figure out what can be provided for free and is ad supported, or what is a paid for service. This point basically centers around their paying behavior. What is their online paying behavior like, particularly in terms of the platform they're using for payments? Let's say a tier 1 person, me and you, we might be pretty comfortable with using a credit card and making large ticket payments. But somebody from a tier 2 and tier 3 community might not be. They might be much more comfortable with UPI or maybe even Paytm, because Paytm is, I guess, these days pretty much utilized in a lot of shops. Next, we need to figure out what are they willing to pay for. What is the ticket size specifically? How much they would be willing to expend online? Number 3, we need to identify the distribution channels that will reach sufficient number of consumers in a cost-effective manner. Now, the channels that are frequented by a tier 1, let's say, person who is in our age group, would possibly be Snapchat, would possibly be Instagram Reels, right? But somebody from tier 2 and tier 3 might be frequenting YouTube. So those differences in channels need to be mapped out before you figure out your channel strategy while building the product. Apart from that, trusted sources of recommendations. Like we are pretty comfortable with getting recommendations out of YouTube, out of Facebook, right? But people in tier 2 and tier 3 are more inclined towards and actually trust recommendations coming from their relatives, from their trusted group of friends. So how to leverage that particular source would be beneficial and actually gave us a long way to go. And finally, we need to ensure usability across multiple languages and literacy levels. India is a place of multiple languages. Like I'm pretty sure what the language that I speak would be starkly different than a lot of people who are currently watching this video, right? And the literacy levels are pretty different as well. Hence, we need to account for two things. Number one, the app has vernacular content. It's available across multiple languages. And number two, there are varying degrees of visual heavy and text heavy screens so that people who are not very comfortable with reading can still understand the application. Post this, we'll be deep diving in what some startups in India are doing to solve these specific Bharat problems. Over to you, Arpit.
Thanks, Prati. Thanks for the insights and to give an understanding that what Bharat actually is, what kind of users we have. Let's deep dive that what Indian startups are doing and in which sectors they are doing. Yes. So let's start with agri-tech. Agri-tech Indian agriculture market is of the size of $200 billion to $370 billion. So if we just see agri-tech, the whole market size can be more than $200 billion. But what are the challenges agri-tech is facing at this point? See, there are major challenges in supply chain because the shelf life of the product is very less. And second thing, which is very prominent, the farmers, which are the like tiniest cog in this chain, do not get revenue or profits which they deserve. The amount of income they have is very less. Why? Because there are a lot of middlemen from farmer to a consumer. I read a report recently and it said that in some of the areas in India, from farmer to consumer, there are like nearly 8 middlemen. Now imagine everyone will take their cut or percentage. So how much amount a farmer will be getting? So this is one of the major problem. Second thing, shelf life is very less. So we look down on few startups who are working in this field in their own way to solve these problems. So Ninja Card, Bijay, Zumbotel, Crow Farm, Waycool, they are all trying to optimize some parts of these problems. Let's discuss Ninja Card in detail. You see that visual on the screen. There are three important, points where Ninja Card is trying to address the problem. They have made three important decisions. They have made collection centers, fulfillment centers, and distribution centers. And if each of these centers has their different way of helping the farmers or the consumers. So collection centers give steady demand to the farmers. So farmers produce and there's a collection center and their produces goes to collection center. Fulfillment centers that at what distribution center, what kind of demand will be there. So they are using analytics, they are using technology to identify that what will be the demand and supply. The fulfillment center is matching that demand and supply. And distribution center is a center nearby your city from where the retail shops get all the distribution. Now let's say what this startup is doing technically. So they are trying to disrupt the fresh produce supply chain. They are taking the risk of picking fruits and vegetables from farmers and delivering it to small our retail outlets. Then they're also giving steady demands and better remuneration to the farmers. Yes. Let's talk about the next sector we have. The next sector we have again is a very big sector, which is the social commerce. We have seen e-commerce changing the landscape, but then e-commerce and social commerce can be overlapping somewhere. But social commerce is becoming a new major place of where new startups are coming, new innovations are coming. So let's go deep into this. The major problem that it was addressing was like the e-commerce penetration is still very great, but it's not as great as social commerce. Yes. And the startups which we see which are working in this are Meesho, Bulbul, Sim City Mall. So let's go deep down and just think what Meesho is doing. So Meesho, again a social commerce product, is trying to make resellers on the platform. Like what used to happen like 20 years back or 15 years back. So every tier 2, tier 3 cities, there used to be one cloth merchant or someone who used to go to outside city and bring clothes, and with a small cut, he used to give that supply in the village or city. And so he was micro entrepreneur at that point. Now Meesho is trying to do the same thing with technology. So what Meesho does is like you can register yourself on Meesho, then you can the products which are listed on Meesho, you can become reseller of those products. So you can put on these products to your Instagram feed, to your Twitter feed, to your WhatsApp feed, and if someone buys after liking that article or liking that piece, there's a small cut which comes to you. So Meesho is trying to make homemakers and entrepreneurs in a social way, and because social has very large penetration compared to e-commerce also. Now, what Meesho has done, it has produced 2 million resellers on the platform and it has 20,000 manufacturers for 500 towns. So imagine the kind of impact it is happening, giving on our local economy. So Meesho is one great example which Dhruv also discussed. Now come on to another sector which everyone knows, which is very prominent with all the funding and fanfare at this moment. But let's talk about EdTech. We all know EdTech. Like Baiju has been the flag bearer of EdTech, and it has gone global. But we have just touched the iceberg. The Indian private tuition market is around $90 billion. Imagine $90 billion, and the revenues we are expecting from our startups at this point is less than $2 billion. So the market size is great. And just I'm talking about India. What are the problems which these startups are trying to solve? So definitely quality education. Like the kind of education we can get in the metro cities is tough to get in like tier 1, tier 2 cities. So quality education, and second thing is accessibility to that education. The kind of skill development we can have in metro cities that is lacking in tier 1, tier 2 cities, and I will say villages also. And geographical penetration is like huge deterrent to this growth. Let's see which are the startups who are working in this space. So Baiju is a household name with Shah Rukh Khan, with advising, and like he's a flag bearer of Indian startups also. But there's another budding startup, Vedantu, which is doing great. Topper again is doing great. And recently we all heard about Whitehead Junior's deal with Baiju. So Whitehead Junior is like become household name. But I want to focus on someone else. I want to focus on Doubtnut. Like many of you must have heard about Doubtnut, many of you must have not. Let's talk about Doubtnut. What Doubtnut is solving. So I will tell you the use case. Imagine a student who is stuck in a question or on a question and he doesn't have access to teacher. Imagine a student from Rajasthan's tier 3 city and a village and he don't know whom to connect. In Doubtnut, you can just click picture of that question and Doubtnut's ML AI engine gives you solution in a video format in 10 seconds. See, Swati? Yeah. So you can click and upload photos and videos based and answers within 10 seconds. Now it has made life simple for tier 2 and tier 3 audience in a much better way. They can have access to all their doubts, they can clear all their doubts and all the crunch time just by their phones. And this has been great. Imagine at 2 a.m. before exam next morning, you are stuck on a question. And you know, for a student that creates anxiety, you click picture, you upload on by Doubtnut, and boom, you have a solution. You have an answer in video format, which is easily understandable also. That's what we are talking about. That's the innovation we talk about. The startups are building for Bharat. Next. So other sector I want to talk about is SME sector. The SME sector is India is huge. Huge means huge, but they have lack of basic technology, the new technology, the credit platform. They don't get easy credit, and they don't have access to marketing platforms also. And there are like amazing startups who are trying to solve, few bits of these problems. So ShipRocket, Landing Card, Khata Book, Meesho also, Shopmatic, and OK Credit are trying to solve these problems. Let's focus on one of these startups, which is Khata Book. Yes. So what Khata Book did, imagine you are a big company, you have all the solution, all the software, you have the workforce to manage your accounts, like your credit debit statements, and like what amount of money will be coming, you are going from you. Imagine a kirana shop owner or a pan shop owner. They have very less revenues. They have like credit debits of like 100 rupees, 20 rupees, 25 rupees, 30 rupees, and it's very hard to manage. Like they used to keep credits on their phone, maybe on some pen and paper, and it's very hard to match all these records. Second thing, it's very hard to get money also out of from people because they have to go there, they have to remind their call them, and Khata is trying to solve all these problems. So it has replaced the traditional ledger book which we have to a new digital ledger cash book. You can manage, record, review all credit accounts on the app, and it takes care of your all the accounting needs. It gives you statements that what is left. You see screenshot on the left. Ahmed Hostel 560 rupees pending. Prakash 8,000 rupees pending, and this is the best thing. Like they have these kind of transactions only. The best thing, it provides regional support also. So whether you're sitting in Maharashtra, whether you're sitting in Karnataka, whether you're sitting in Bihar, you can download Khata Book and have access to this. So like this is amazing. Now I feel so after covering all the four sectors, let's focus on like what we are trying to solve at Hive. The challenges at this point we have. Like India is an example, prime example, where there's this difference, stark difference between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 cities. Like best example, the stark difference, and we have different challenges. So as Aditya was talking about, one job to be done can be of one type of people, definitely, because the needs are different, the cultures are different, the traditions are different. So let's see what are the problems we have. So challenges in Bharat, one thing is that we have lack of good infra. Definitely, you go in beyond metro cities, the roads are not in great shape. I won't say bad shape, but not in great shape. The infra in hospitals, healthcare sector, edtech center are all not in great shape. So and the social norms are still catching up. So although we had penetration, internet penetration, the social norms are not caught up. People are using Instagram, WhatsApp, but they are not meeting other people. and still meeting other people, maybe of opposite sex, maybe of friends at odd times, is still a social stigma there. So social norms are still catching up. So there's no great place to physical place to hang out, and there are difficulty to form or blossom relationship, and we are trying to solve these problems like virtual social experience, which will be solving both these problems, because we personally feel at Hike that social products will always play a key role in society, as well as the behavior will be changing of society. Yes, social norms in India has always been key drivers of cultures, and we think so our social products can also drive change in the societies. Yes. So introducing Highland, you see from the screen grab also that's a magical place to hang out online. See, we want to give that experience to user where they cherish moments and memories. Social some of the social products are like you scroll down the feed, you see photos, you like photos, you comment, you add friend. Nothing like that. We want if you are close to someone, yes, if you are close to someone, you should blossom that friendship. So glad we want to provide that space, those moments, those memories where you are cherishing those friendship with your close ones. And if you don't have your close friends, then you can come on the platform, form new friendships, and then thrive those friendships. So we want to provide that experience where either you have like friends, then you cherish. If you don't have, you form friends and cherish those relationships and create memorable moments. And this is what we are trying to create. We want you to be most expressive. So this is what our Hikemoji does. Like 60% you can be yourself, 40% who you want to be. You can create your Hikemoji, and then you can add on elements what Aditya was discussing, like longer hairline, like nice teeth, remove spectacles, 40% whatever you want to be. So this is what we are trying to give an opportunity, because we firmly believe that our product should have a north star metric of great people, of happy people and great relationships. Like many of the startups have north star in like number metrics or specific numbers, but we feel so our north star is the VOC, voice of our customer, where they are happy in their relationship. Now I would love Smriti to go deep down on these experiences. Over to you, Smriti. Smriti, you are on mute.
Hold up. I am.
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Yep. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Great. All right. So we launched Highland early preview with two shared experiences focused around, like Arpit said, forming new relationships and fostering them. The first one was Highland Home, and the second one was Big Screen. Let's deep dive on both of these and let's try to see how it is solving the Indian problem. Going towards Highland Home, what is it? It is actually your own personal space virtually where you can hang out with your favorite person and have shared experiences like watching together while you chat and you communicate. As you see on my screen, you can see a room, you can see two people sitting there, and you can see that they're possibly talking on call and they can even chat with each other. Now, what problem we were trying to solve via this? So, like Arpit said, there is a lack of infra. And not just that, there are some restrictions which prevent people from hanging out with their special person. Now, it can be somebody, actually your special person, or it can be your best friends. And there are some kind of restrictions that you can't hang out with them post a particular hour, which is very common in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Now you can hang out on Highland. You can watch movies together. You can watch shows together. And in fact, we are adding a lot more new shared experiences just so that you can build great relationships online. Next, we built Big Screen. Now, Big Screen was a virtual cinema experience where you could come online anytime, you could watch great vernacular content around the clock, and you could make new friends around the content you love. Like we know, nothing brings together people like content. Like we literally sit together with our friends and we scroll Instagram feeds. We sit together and we watch memes. We forward YouTube links to each other. The concept behind this was similar. You come online, you watch videos that you really like, and you talk to people and you make new friendships. Now, how did we solve for India for Bharat in this? We made our profile very visual heavy. We added stickers so that it becomes very apparent to the person viewing it, and it's also very interesting while viewing it. Apart from that, we also added a spam check because females face a lot of spam in India, let's face it. Apart from that, this gave them a unrestricted place where they could talk to anyone without, the restrictions of their current environment. So I guess this brings us to the end of our presentation. In summary, what I would like to add is knowing our customers becomes all the more important when when the customer is not somebody you're very familiar with. Especially is if most of us, if at least I know that relating with a tier 2, tier 3, if you can't do that very easily, then knowing what their behavior is like is very important. Frequent user interviews, getting out surveys, talking to your customers, basically getting into their shoes would actually help you build for Bharat better. Thank you.
Hey, so Smriti, Arpit, thank you so much for that session. I think all the examples that you gave us were really interesting, and especially the idea of going to the different tiers of the country, right? Because one thing a lot of Indian products have been accused of is just building for the 5 or 6% of India. Because, like India, just because of sheer virtue of numbers, even if you target 6 or 7% of India's population, you're still saying I'm going after 80 or 100 million people, which for most products would be, you know, yeah, a big deal. So when we are a little short on time, so we're going to limit it just to 2 questions. So the first question is basically an amalgamation of 2 questions coming in, one from Kavya and the other from Himang. So basically they're looking at, when you move from tier 1, which is the most profitable, or here let me also just put in an additional segregation. So there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, which are city segregations. But in India, we also have a strong class segregation, even in tier 1, there'll be a lot of people who might not be able to pay the same as, a large urban, say the upper and middle class, right? So when you go across these class and city segregations, how do you effectively monetize? Because as you go lower down the city spectrum or the class spectrum, the monetization options also decrease, right? And when you're going in, and Himank has been basically asking is that most of your early innovators, adopters are usually from the, segment that has money to spend. So how do you negotiate this? Like, how do you make your product both usable but also profitable?
Great question. Swati, I will go first. Okay.
Go on.
Yes. So, great question. Now, there are two aspects to this. Like, I will talk monetization secondary part. But if you see all the products which we also discuss in examples, so every product has different user base and they are targeting audience in a different way. So when it comes to monetization aspect, it depends on product to product, that what product you have, in which space you have. For example, let's take example of Dream 11. Like it has good penetration in tier 2, tier 3 cities also. So it's easier for it's easy monetization for them because people know cricket, people can easily form teams and have spend on that. But take for example any other social commerce product. Okay, for them, getting users onboarded and getting that first dollar from user is still tough because people are not that people are skeptical to spend online. A second thing, people also don't have transaction mediums. So India is still going through that cycle where startups are experimenting and figuring out that what is the best model for them. Like if we go down the models, so subscription can definitely be a model, then microtransactions can be a model, then one-time transactions can be a model. So every startup according to their product needs is experimenting and monetization and figuring out that what's the best monetization model for them.
And apart from that, a lot about the monetization framework that you've used depends upon the product that you're building and who you're building for. I mean, there's no just one good solution for approaching tier 2 and tier 3. It entirely depends upon the different sectors or different even age groups what you're targeting. Like the
Exactly.
spending propensity of somebody who's possibly in the younger age group would be possibly less as compared to somebody who is, working, and that would be possibly more than somebody who's possibly middle-aged because they don't really want to spend on it. So it all depends upon what you're targeting and what your value proposition is. In fact, in some ways you can, let's say a B2C environment, a lot of companies are even charging the businesses rather than the customers. and monetizing that way. So it all depends what you're building, what you're trying to build.
Right. I think that's an important distinction for people. Anyone over here in our community also is looking to build products that go across different classes and different tiers of cities is to clearly define your audience at the start. It is not that the monetization of a certain group is the same as the other. So don't use the same metrics or the same parameters to judge.
Absolutely.
So okay, so coming to going across different cities, right? We know that a lot of infrastructure is now getting available and all. So Rizwan's question is interesting in that way is that, okay, Geo is coming with the smartphone market and all. But to build on this, is there something that you think like to really unlock the potential of Bharat? Is there some, infrastructure side innovation that you guys are really waiting for to happen to be really able to unlock that potential?
Okay, I'll go first. So definitely, Geo is trying to bring cheap smartphone in the range of 4,000. The biggest disruption this will give is 57% of the tier two, tier three city. I won't say full market, but 2G phone market is with Idea and Airtel. So Jio is trying to expand that reach by that cheap smartphones because 4G is available. Jio is only available on 4G. B part. Now, when we talk about that, what difference it will make? So imagine at this point also. So the tier two cities also we see Agra, maybe the examples which Smriti gave, also have access to smartphones. People still have access, but you go beyond to that layer. People generally don't. People still uses that old keypad wala phones. So this will bring that tire also on platforms, on digital platforms. So two things going to happen. So we are going to be extremely data rich, but the second important thing is that we won't be that data insightful. Like data will be start coming from tier to tier cities also, audience behavior also, but taking out insights from this behavior will take time. So when we are talking to about expanding any product or any startup to that kind of audience, we will see in 2 3 years there will be change in how products are made. Just like JTBD, like jobs to be done for products will change depending on what kind of audience we will be onboarding in next 2 3 years. So there will be like shift in different products. Maybe we will see some light products coming for some heavy products, maybe just like Facebook Lite is there, something like this. But this transactions will happen. This transmission will happen.
Yep, similar to what Arpit said.
Fair enough. And I think that's going to be an important thing for all the entrepreneurs and product people out there who are, designing right now. Keep an eye out for what's changing on the landscape that's outside your product, because your product is also dependent on a lot of infrastructure coming in. And if you look towards the trends that are shaping in and are able to anticipate it, you could be probably, one of the first through market. Probably not the first because
Yes.
the first person always gets short,
Yeah.
but be the second person to market and capitalize on it. So, guys, we will now be moving on to a final speaker from the Hype team. Thank you, Smriti. Thank you, Arpit, for the great session. I'm now going to invite Dhruv back on screen once again to introduce our final speaker for the day.
Sure. Thank you, Siddharth, and thank you, Arpin and Smriti. So, guys, you remember I asked you this question initially when we opened this event? I think Arpin and Smriti just gave an answer key to that, right? Cool. So now that we know more about Bharat and Bharat companies in general, I'd like to ask you again, which one would you choose? Would you choose a tech giant or where the tech giant is investing on? Would you join the status quo or would you go with building for the next billion customers, also known as Bharat? Great, lovely talk, lovely session. Now that we have learned about building for customers, being customer centric, building for Bharat customers, now you also have to retain them, right? So for that, let me invite on screen Ayush Nalotia, who's an avid reader and so focused on Bharat that he recently read Ramayana. He leads growth and revenue at Hike, has enormous experience in different sectors. Ayush, over to you. Let me just put you on screen. Unmute yourself, please, Ayush.
Yeah, thank you so much, bro, for the warm introduction. And I think great to hear from Aditya, Smriti, Arpit. Great chat. I think a lot of good stuff here. What I'm going to be talking to you guys about um, is essentially the next step, right? So we talked about customer centricity, job to be done. That's essentially how we are thinking about products and how we are thinking about building things. And then we talked to you about building for Bharat, which we are doing, right? That's our core focus, and that's sort of what is the target market. And then we sort of come to the core business part of things, which is how do you sort of grow the business, and to sort of grow the business, you need to get more users, acquire more users, and we'll talk a bit about that. Before we jump into it, brief introduction about me. I'm Ayush Narotia. I'm a senior product manager at Hike. I I lead user growth for Hike, and which essentially makes me involved as a part of large part of the products. And been with Hike for a while, so I've been a part of a lot of major things that we have done, including launching Hikeland, launching Hike Mochi, launching the whole Hike sticker chat the first time, and now the the idea is mainly to talk about how we sort of do retention and aha moments, and how that sort of plays a role in driving growth in general and for us. So directly jumping up, we're going to be talking about what are the growth levers, how retention sort of ends up getting deprioritized in most organizations, what are aha moments, and how to find an aha moment and use that to drive growth. So, like for any sort of any startup, any company, any product, like what are the growth levers? Like it's very basic. It could be online, offline. It could be PNG. It could be big basket. It could be whatever. It's very basic. You acquire more customers, which usually becomes very costly, or you retain existing customers, and which may seem like a very low hanging fruit, but it's usually very tricky. And this is one of the key things that we see people sort of juggle with, because what do you focus on? You need to really channelize your energy. Where do you focus your time? Do you focus that on, like, how can you bring in more customers, acquire them at a very low cost, or the people who are coming in, are they sort of retaining in the system, or they are leaving just after trying out your product, or not even trying out the product? So most people tend towards like an acquisition driven growth, because that's a lot of instant gratification. Itne users mere app mein aa rahe hain, and but like an acquisition driven growth can get really super expensive, and if you do not have a good solid retention to your app. But like, why is that? Like, why does retention sort of end up getting deprioritized, right? So let's talk about that, and let's also discuss how can we sort of ensure we don't do this, if sort of we need to bring focus to it. And so retention, like what is retention firstly, right? This is like, in simply put, if 100 people came to my application, my product on day zero, how many of those people are coming on the next day, or how many of those people are coming on the 7th day, or how many of those people are coming in the next month, right? So if I open, there's IPL, it's on Hotstar. So if let's say 100 people are opening Hotstar today, how many of those people are coming in the next week, right? So that's ideally what retention is. Or if you're in the context of Hike and Hikeland, if 100 users sort of join Hike today, how many of them end up opening Hike tomorrow and end up using Hikeland, or end up sending a message, or end up inviting a friend to their home, or watching something with their friend in the home? So, but yeah, like retention can be like a very short-term metric, because it takes time, right? And it could be often years as well to see its impact on the company's growth. And to truly understand the impact of what retention can impact to the company, you need a longer term view, and it could be at least 1 year, preferably multiple years as well. But taking a long-term view can be really challenging. Why? Because like usually the teams that sort of work on this, they work on really short-term goals, and it could be those short-term goals could be quarterly, monthly, even weekly in some scenarios, right? And when those things happen, people are not really getting that instant gratification that this is what the impact is really happening, right? And um, and that's why people stop seeing this as a burning problem or an impactful opportunity. They see that this, we're making some changes, there is a 1% 3% impact on retention, but this is not really giving us anything right now. And as a result, they just end up sort of deprioritizing all the retention initiatives. Now think of it like this: like your retention is really impacting your new users who are coming into the app, and now a large part of your user base, like uh, be, be it like a 100 million company or a 10 million or a 2 million company, they all will have a large part of the users who've been there in the app for like for a month, for 5 months, 6 months, for 2 years, 5 years. But and whatever impact you create with them is going to create like a instant impact on your overall metrics. And what new users does is gives you a long-term impact. So let's run with it with a mini example. And so let's compare two competitors. So let's say we have company A and company B, and both of them are acquiring new users per month. Let's say company A is acquiring 1 million, 10 lakh users, and company B is acquiring 2 million, 20 lakh users. 2x, right? That's a 2x difference in the kind of users who are bringing in this system. And clearly, like, zooming out, if I look into it, I would say that, company B is just hitting it out of the park, right? Let's go one level deeper. Let's look at what the retentions look like. So company A, let's say, really good retention, 85%. Company B, 2 million users, 65%. So what? Like there is a 20% retention drop, but then I'm acquiring twice the number of users. Company B is still sort of winning. And that is exactly what you see after 6 months. You see that after 6 months, like company A has sort of grown into a 4.2 million user base company, and company B is still at like a 5.3 million company. But where are we after sort of after 3 years? After 3 years, like or Mao has sort of really grown, and after 3 years, company A has really overshot company B, and it's really maintaining that lead consistently because company is nowhere close to coming close to it. Now, obviously, your strategies with time are also going to change. You're going to be bringing in a lot more tactics and creating a lot more impact in the process. But this definitely keeps growing up. So now, while we're talking about that, like how do you sort of drive retention? Now, there's no sort of rocket science to it. I'm going to focus on like three basic problems, right? It's either how to get people to open the product, like more and more. How do you do that? How do you get users to hit the aha moment? And we're going to talk more about it. And how do you get users to experience the core product value recurrently and more and more? So our focus right now is going to be mainly on how do you get users to hit the aha moment at the earliest. But before, what is aha moment? Aha moment, very simply, is the first key moment when users realize the value of the product. Now, someone has made an effort to download the product or open the product. It could be a browser, application, whatever. And as soon as they come in, they have to really understand what this is about. And once they do, they are going to stick around, and they're going to stick around for a long period of time. And a lot of people might think that this is about like deep advanced analytics and massive machine learning algorithms, but it's not that. It's more of a very simple math and a really strong messaging that you can communicate. I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Some companies who have been billion-dollar companies, have had billion plus users, they have talked about what they are, right? So Facebook has announced that the aha moment for them is how can you get a user to have 7 friends in 10 days of joining. For Slack, it is how can you sort of get a company and the team to be sending 2,000 messages, right? Irrespective of the other details. And once you sort of do this, this really sort of works with you all the way, and you can really have your retentions. Because what really happens, like once the user comes into the app, you have a lot of things going on, and you start throwing whatever new you have built. Why don't we go tell users about this? We built just something new. Why don't we tell users about this? Because those are all optimized for like certain short-term goals that individual teams will have inside their overall company. But the overall company goal would be, let's say, something entirely different. And this is what it is for Facebook and Slack. We at Hike, we do this like at great lengths from time to time. The first stab at it we took at about 4 years ago when we started looking at it from this perspective, and like something we very well championed by Facebook across the industry, where they started doing this, like their head of growth from the early days, like from 2008 to 2011, who really drove this, and we took a lot of mentorship from him directly, and we worked on this piece. And yeah, I think definitely works great wonders in terms of how our retentions have gone. Like while we have emphasized on this rationale, it has really gone up 20%, 30% higher. So, however, the core idea is that it shouldn't be really focused on sort of like um, uh, deep deep analysis. Like, so if for Facebook, just see how simple is this, right? Within 10 days, like get people to 7 friends. And it gives you a very simple focus. And it is not about, I need to get people to upload a profile picture. I need them to upload like an album. I need them to talk to so many people. It's very simple. Like, these actions are really simple because driving these actions have to be really simple. And what's really, really important about aha moments is they help you provide a rally cry for the entire company. It is not anymore your management team or your product team that's really sitting down and thinking, how do I move the company forward? In our case, like the moment we make it so simple, now we have 10x number of people in the company who are thinking about this problem statement, and they are really contributing to a lot of our ideation sessions, where we really discuss that, how can we really achieve the simple metric, like how many people are there, like let's say we have Facebook, and how many people are there who are sitting at 6 friends right now. We just need to get like one more friend to them, and that's what gives us the aha moment. That's what gives us the retention. So and definitely one of the great things we do here at Hike. Now, obviously, like that's all theory, right? So how do you find your aha moment? So we're not going to go into the details of the maths here, but we'll briefly just touch upon the topic. I would really want to spend more time taking up questions from you guys. And so how do you find your aha moment? Aha moment, like you essentially compare like bunch of actions like that users do, right? So for Hike, it could be opening the app, opening Hikeland, opening the home, inviting a friend to your home, watching something inside the home, entering the big screen. Few references that we did, right? And so you really want to find this overlap space where you find people who have taken these actions, and you find people who have retained. Now, like there's a clear concept of sort of correlation and causation, right? So during a lot of these analysis, a lot of actions driving these aha moments could be correlation and not causation, which means you can't necessarily say that if people have done this, they will retain in the app for sure. What we can really do is that the only way to differentiate is that we have to run a lot of these experiments so that we induce more people to do these actions, and then we see if they are guiding higher retention or not. And why not? Like, because otherwise we won't really need a lot of these teams to be sort of building these products. We wouldn't really need to be thinking about the customers. We would just have a machine which will sort of build all of these things for us, right? So and that is what we do at Hike. Like, we are a very data driven sort of company, where we look at a lot of these data points as inputs, and then we apply that with our own business thinking, and our own understanding of the customers, our own understanding of what is a job to be done, and how does it affect our overall target market. And that is how we sort of build a lot of these things. And like in this case, for example, like we started with about 50 basic metrics to start with, and like with different combinations we ended up with like about 3,000 plus combinations, and which eventually gave us like a few of what these aha moments could be, which we try out in our app from time to time. And some of those things can change like every 3 months to 6 months because the product's evolving as well. Like we're not a product which is growing, right? Because along with the requirements of the customer. So yeah, definitely this, and that's pretty much about it, guys. Wanted to keep it short, and let's talk about your questions.
Hey Ayush, thank you so much for this insightful session. I think focusing on that aha moment is a very important thing for anyone who's building a product or working in entrepreneurship and all, because a lot of products come to market without the idea of having that aha moment, and hence they just become those bland things that disappear into the background eventually. So just keeping this in mind, there's a question here, and I'm going to build on this. So money is asking like acquiring new customers is costly, and you can't only focus on retention. So how do you strategize on both? But to just build on this, I would usually say there are three parts. One is acquisition, retention, and invitation, which is basically you want your audience to go out and invite other friends in, right? So generally, the best aha moment is something that will bring in people, make them want to stay, and also go out and spread the word. But usually those aha moments are much more trickier to come by. So when you look at designing or developing, and of course this changes from the phase the product is in, how do you start defining aha? So I think a lot of people here would be interested, how do you define an aha for a product that is just going to market vis-a-vis a product that's already in the market for a while and has a lot of users?
So defining an aha for a new product can be really difficult, right? Whenever you sort of build a new product, you have to go with a really strong opinion, right? And usually that strong opinion, and because it's a brand new product, and let's say it's a small startup, that vision comes from the CEO or one of the founders, right? For a lot of like established companies, what people might say entrepreneurs, right? Where you have like a small team in a big company where you are tasked with something. You might have one or two set of individuals who have a vision, right? And with that vision, they sort of build the product. And obviously, vision is not like, I just had a shower thought and I decided, let's go build this, right? So it's that could be based on some bit of research, some bit of understanding the industry. It could be primary, secondary, qualitative research. It could be like some data points that you see out there, and that tells you that I want to build this, and I want to build this in a certain way. And then you really like start tracking it every in with some frequency. Like it could be every 2 months, it could be every 3 months or 6 months, depending on what your product is. What we try to do is like keep an eye on it from like every 3 to 6 months period. Where are we on the right track or not? Or what we really think our aha moment is it still that, right? Or we are really forcing our users in a different direction? And again, a lot depends on how your product is strategized and how your onboarding and journey is getting strategized at the same way. Yeah. So and yeah, like and to answer what Money is also saying here, again, it's difficult to focus on both, right? Like in if in a in an ideal world, I would say let's do everything, right? But then when you're focusing on two things, it's your time gets split, right? You only got 24 hours in a day, right? So when I have two projects or with two strategies, you'll have, let's say, 20 projects, and not everything works. Like I will try out 10 strategies in retention, and maybe one hits or maybe two hit, and that's the kind of success rate that you're dealing with a lot of these things, because you might see a lot of things which you see in the application or in the products in front of you, but not necessarily you have seen everything that people have tried out. There are many things that get tried, but they don't come to the mass set of audience, right? They come in as experiments and then they go out. So I think the idea is like, why not both is essentially to have some focus, and doesn't mean that it is supposed to be done for the entire duration. Maybe there are quarters, right? And that is essentially what a roadmap looks like. So there is a certain quarter in the roadmap where your 90% focus is on, let's say, retention, and that is where your metrics are, that is where your targets are. And once you have, let's say, good retention, then you start focusing more on the driving more acquisitions, and then it goes into autopilot. because there is a period of learning as well to a lot of these things, right? Because once we put something out there, we need that thing in the market for a little while for us to get some more information from the market, from the users, and see if we are really on the right track. And then we possibly go with some other set of iterations.
Makes sense. And I think a lot of products fall into this trap of either making a lot of knee-jerk changes to their product based on early feedback, or else waiting for too long to make any changes, right?
Yeah.
And I think finding that sweet spot there is the way you both get new customers and are able to retain them.
Yeah.
So coming to the customer side of this, we have two questions that are kind of interlinked. So we have a question from Rohit Pandey, which is talking about how customer segmentation helps. And we also have a question from Yashbant Singh, who's talking about beta testing, which I would like to kind of rework as A/B testing, right? So if we look at, say, customer segmentation and all, right? And as a product, like you guys have been out in the market for a while, and even though Hikeland is new, the overall Hike product has been there for a while. So when you start looking at new aha moments within the existing product, how do you approach that across customer segmentations, and how do you approach A/B testing and all?
So great question. I think these are the two parts, right? The first part is the customer segmentation, where you really need to see that the product, again, like when you're building the product, that why you're building the product, like what is the job to be done. So when users come into the product, you really need to see what are those 5 actions. And for an app like Hike, it cannot be like 500 things, right? For possibly an app like Facebook in the current world, it can be 500 things, but or maybe in Instagram it can be 500 things. But for Facebook, for Hike and Hikeland, those sets are not very difficult now, not very broad. So, but what's really important, and again I'll refer back to the Facebook example where they said 7 friends in 10 days. Why not 5 friends in 7 days, or why not 5 friends in 10 days? 7 somewhere hits the mark, where they sort of know that this is what gives us like a great chance at success. And we don't really know, at least it's not publicly available, although we might know some of that information in private conversations. But their starting point was not really 7 friends in 10 days. They started somewhere and they experimented with those things, and then they got to the point where, yeah, this is really working for us, right? And this is really working for us so well that we want to do this across countries, across different cohorts, everywhere. And but to get to those point, you really need to segment your users different ways and really apply your judgment and shortlist a few things which you say that, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to really work on, right? Because when you say that you have to really take a user to 7 friends in 10 days, you are really going to be building experiences in the app, right? And those experiences can't be too pushy. Now you have 10-day period, so maybe the plan is to get them to 4 friends by the 5th day, right? And those are sub milestones that you start defining to get to that goal, right? And that is how you sort of start segmenting a lot of your customers as well. That who are the people who are stuck at 6, right? What is that action that I can take? Maybe I can show a UI on the home screen where they come, where I tell them that, hey, here's this friend you may know, people you may know, right? And you would have seen a lot of these things when you would have used the app. But when we talk about these background concepts, you really know that, what are the things which are letting us make those decisions.
And I think, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I think I can't find the question here, but there were some questions here going around using a lot of data and AI, ML and all. But if I were to boil it down to a very simple thing, like, because of course, as a product manager or someone who's managing product that's out with millions of people, you will of course have a lot of data, but data can also be misleading if you ask it the wrong question. So if I were to ask you, like, what is a piece of advice you could give to people who are working on such products, on how to identify, what mindset they should be in to be able to identify and discover that aha, moment for their customers?
Great thing, right? So data is an enabler. Data is not defining the roadmap. Data is not defining the product. Data is just one input. Another input is what your customers are saying. And what's really important is what do you think? How do you make sense of this whole thing, right? So if something is not making sense, drop it, right? And really apply your judgment on top of whatever inputs you're getting from the quantitative data, from the analysis, from the experiments, and then really apply that with your users. Now, in the whole product development process, we have a lot of things. Now, again, a lot of those are basics, but I'll just touch upon them where you don't really need to sort of experiment everything out there in the market. You can really build something, build prototypes, and show it to users and get their feedback. And when things are more visual, people really understand and you get their feedback. And I think you can really, at the end of the day, you're trying to get the maximum output in the least amount of time, right? So, and things like these can sort of really optimize things for you.
I completely agree because I've seen a lot of product managers even experience once using data as a crutch, because at the end of the day, there's the saying that data is kind of like a hostage you have.
Yeah.
It'll give you any answer that you wanted to give. You just have to be very careful about the kind of questions you're asking from it. So,
At Hike, we really say that you have to wait for 70% data, and because we are really trying to build a really good experience for the users, and uh, data is just one input. So again, there's a great example, right? So if General Motors would be thinking that it would just be looking at past data, they would be just thinking about building faster horses, not cars, right? So they got to cars because thought beyond what data was telling them. That they had a grander vision which they wanted to build. Like if we're just looking at data, we wouldn't even be thinking about Highland. There is nothing like Highland out there in the entire world, right? And data is only going to tell you what's already there. You need to have a vision if you want to sort of build something new. And in the space of social, right, that is really what it is. And that is what makes it really exciting to be sort of building social, because it's just something new, something unique. And that unique perspective, while venturing into the unknown, is really needed. And data can obviously be an enabler to that, but not necessarily a driver at all times.
I completely agree with you on that. And on that vein, what I'd like to just do is get all our speakers on screen at right now. So I'm just going to just be adding all of them here. Yes, I think we're missing somebody.
Aditya had to go somewhere.
Okay. So brilliant. So before we end the session, and Dhruv will be doing a closeout. Before we do that, like at the end of the day, we have a huge audience available to us today, and I'm sure a lot of them would be either working in product or be looking to work in product and build for Bharat. So if each of you had just one piece of advice to give them on how to build for Bharat, because I think that's a huge challenge for us as a country, that we need to build products that cater to a larger base of users. So how would, just a piece of advice from each of you before we, close out. So Ayush, you just wound up. So why don't you just start off?
Okay, I thought you were going to give me a break. Why don't you?
No breaks for the senior PM over here.
Yeah.
By example.
What I would really say is talk to your customers. Really keep talking to your customers. They really know what they want. You don't know what they want, right? So you're building for them. So go talk to them, and just apply your judgment, and then deliver what they want in a really best way possible. And something linked to that is you are a customer yourself, so use the product. I can't explain how many people I've spoken to who are just busy building, and they are just not using the product themselves, right? And so you really invest that time using the product, and then you are yourself going to know what this feels like, because a user is thinking like a user. But when you become a user of your product, you can really identify those loopholes. You can identify those focus areas, improvement areas, which no one really else can give you. That's
That's actually very important, especially when your users are from areas that you're not generally used to or dealing with in your day-to-day life.
yeah, like
Yeah.
every 2 weeks, like we have like this huge customer research report that we get where we are speaking to all our users, and that is like that morning email is like the first email that I see, right? And PMs at Hike see, and many people at Hike like really see that with a certain level of diligence, and that comes to us. And many times we are a part of those conversations where we are directly speaking to those users, and like when we are sort of building something, when we are sort of testing something, like in a virtual setup, again it can be difficult, but then we have figured it out. Like we are speaking to our users more than what we were doing when we were on the ground. Like even online setup has actually enabled us to talk to so many of our tier 2 tier 3 users who we were not able to get to, or who we were not able to bring to where we are. And now all the shackles are broken, right? So we are really this is really working well for us. And while we are trying to build a real online product, like if we are not able to talk to those people online, that would be a shame, right? But it's working like a charm.
Yeah, that's a great insight, and we're hoping that a lot more of this happens now as digital connections happen. So, Smriti, a piece from you.
Yep. So, like I used to say, knowing your customer, that's absolute supreme, absolute supreme. But apart from that, one thing you should really drill down on is who your customer are. I mean, I've seen a lot of startups and a lot of people who are just not sure of who their customer is. What's the key characteristic of their customer? They're just trying to build for too many people or too many personas. So really get that segmentation right. Really get that particular persona right. Get that image in your head that this is the person that I'm building for, and then build for them. Because you might not know if you're like अच्छा ये चीज उसके लिए भी अच्छा रहेगा, उसके लिए भी अच्छा रहेगा, उसके लिए भी अच्छा करेगा. But that actually might ruin the whole product for everyone. So that would be one thing from me. Another thing would be about data. A lot of times your customers are saying something, but they might be actually using the product in a different way. So never lose track of the data. Never lose track of what they are actually doing on the platform and how you can make their lives easy. So that's that. Arpit, over to you.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, two pieces of advice. Definitely doubling down on what Ayush and Smriti says, that talking to customers is absolutely essential, and data is equally essential. I will just add on a little bit of gut is also there, like what your gut says, and that feeling comes from experiencing different products. So, if you are a budding product manager, go explore Play Store, especially if you are trying to develop any app. Like, look at the apps which are not popular. Like, believe me, we get great ideas from the apps, and then see data, see VOC, like talk to customers, and then from what your experience of you look, the other apps are doing, and then try to come up with your product thinking. One thing is that. Second thing, read a lot of product failures, like why the product failed. Like especially when Aditya was discussing JTBD, jobs to be done. Like many people tried different things, but they failed. And what were the core reasons for their failures? Like you will get great insights. So these two pieces of advice: data, VOC, little gut, and develop that gut with experience by using different products.
Yeah, Arpit, I think that's a perfect piece of advice. Understanding from failure, especially of a lot of other organizations that have either tried to break into your space or have been trailblazers, is important. Like a website I would suggest to a lot of our listeners right now is there's this website called failory.com. It's FAILORY, which basically just documents why different organizations across the world have failed. It's just a great way for us to learn from. It gives you what their business models was and what went wrong with those business models. So it's important. It's important for us to also understand that, because the path to success is something that is we are discovering on our own, but failure is something that becomes public, right? So I think that's an important point, Arpit. So I think we're going to wind up the session at this point right now, and I'll hand over to Dhruv to kind of close us out.
Thanks, that. I mean, amazing session. A lot of insights, and I just really, love that line. Data is just an enabler, and you still have to use your own head. Data will not give you the roadmap. With that, Thank you so much for your time, everyone watching us. It was a great turnout. And you know that you have started your weekend very well. You have started with so much insight into Bharat, so much insight into the product management techniques. So thank you so much. Keep your feedback coming in the comments after this live is over. You can keep posting in the YouTube comments as well. And I'd like to listen from you. What do you want us to do next? Any topics that you'd like to suggest, any certain type of events you want, just keep pouring that in. You'll find link to our meetup group in the description. You can reach out to the speakers. You can find their LinkedIn profile links in the description as well. With that, I'll be closing this. And before I close this, uh, it takes a great team to organize a great event. And I'd like to give a mention to everyone in the Product Tank team. And you can see their names and designation on the screen. With that, cheers. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great weekend ahead. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you guys for
Thank you,
organizing.
guys.